So I was listening to this podcast between George Janko is his name, this dude that used to be on Logan Paul's podcast, and the comedian Pete Holmes, who um, grew up right around where I grew up. And George is all Christian and using a very uh, Christian American evangelical, perhaps Christian language. And Pete Holmes grew up in that, abandoned that, and now thinks, Jesus, as he said, if Jesus were to come now, he'd be like, "Why are you guys still talking about me?" It's because Jesus is about the Christ consciousness, the Jesus within type uh, stuff, if you will. And I feel like I'm somewhere between the middle of that because I think religion largely is rules for human behavior, which sounds like, oh, fucking rules. You know, I'm not a big follow the rules guy all the time, but I understand the utility of rules. One analogy I like is if you're driving on the highway and there's a curve and it says take the curve at 50, you can probably get away with taking that curve at 60, possibly even 70. But at a certain point, let's say you go 85, you take that curve, you flip a car and you die. So that's a great example of a rule being very important. And now, yeah, you can break the rule a little bit, and it doesn't make a big deal. But you really break that rule, You're dead. That's the purpose of rules. And there's something about this Christ consciousness. It's like a personal thing that we all have within us. I mean, I think that's in the story of Jesus, like in the Bible, like when Jesus dies and the veil in the temple was torn. I think it's pretty obvious that it symbolizes that when Jesus died, it broke this whole notion of all this ritualistic stuff that someone had to do to get access to God. We all have access to God through the Holy Spirit, which what Jesus gave us after he died, right? That's all in the Bible, um, pretty sure. And versus just like, oh, I believe that Jesus was the person, and he came, he was God, and rose from the dead. And you hold on to that idea, and that's the most important thing. And you tell other people about that idea. Now, I believe that obviously all this is about me. It's about you in terms of like I have to live my life, you have to live your life. And even if you were a fundamentalist Christian or just an atheist materialist, you still have to act. And what you do, at least to you, matters. Like you have to take control of yourself and live your life. And this the Christ consciousness, Pete Holmes types, um, they it seems to me as they act it seems to me as if it's a watering down of the story, of the importance of the story, whereas I believe that I don't know what I believe. It's really hard to pin these things down. um, I think what Jesus was getting at was something. I think Jesus was clearly special, obviously, but he was getting at there's something inside of us, like the kingdom of heaven is within. People are just like, oh, the kingdom of heaven is within. Chill, do a few deep breaths and go about my business. But on the contrary, it's actually I feel like there's more weight on the individual, more weight of responsibility. It's just like it's all on you. What did um, Dostoevsky allegedly say? You're responsible for yourself and everyone else as well. And I think that's true to a certain extent because it's like you have an impact on everyone that you come across. And if you were to do that to the best of your ability, I mean, it's just like, how much of an impact could you have? Likewise, I'm reading this book about a guy who was a serial killer. He had a very negative impact on a lot of people. And it's just like, how much does a positive action bring us towards heaven, and how much does negative action brings us towards hell? One of the things that Pete Holmes says in the video, in the podcast, that I've heard from other people as well, is this notion of conscious versus unconscious. Like, oh, it's not really a sin or evil; it's just unconscious behavior. which implies that if the person was conscious, they would just do good things, which I think is quite a claim, because I think there's plenty of people who are perfectly conscious of what they're doing, um, and they want to do bad things. So I think this whole idea of, oh, it's not so much about the literal story of Jesus, about this Christ consciousness within, that actually puts, I think, an even more heavy responsibility on the individual. It's just like, it really matters what you do. If everything matters and you're a part of this, we're all God, then you are, a part of you is God, and it really matters what you do. And I don't think people who get all into the woo-woo act that way, and I don't think they communicate it that way. I don't think they believe it. I think they believe it as a lesser responsibility, as a more responsibility. And then likewise, the people, the more religious people who are more hard-lined, it's just like rules, going back to rules. It's just like, okay, we're all God, do whatever I want. It's all good. I just meditate. Um, I know that comes off as me disparaging those people, but they're not. They're usually not a big fan of rules. But okay, once everyone becomes enlightened, it's like we still have to have the speed limit, and rules are important. Um, so yeah, it's interesting stuff to listen to, but yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta act, you gotta get after it, never give up. Peace and love.